Hello, this is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and welcome to the School Manager Part 19. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to log in with multi-user passwords and a login form, and I'm going to show you how you can share and sync your macro-enabled workbook with anybody in the world, regardless of the version of Excel. It's going to be an incredible training. I cannot wait, so let's get started. All right, thanks so much for joining us today. Yes, this episode, I am going to show you how you can create this user security login and right, so multiple users can log in. And I'm also going to show you how you can share your macro-enabled workbook with anybody in the world so that you can sync your file anyone in the world. It's going to be a great training. So we've got a lot to cover today. So that's it. This is the second to last one. Next week, we're going to cover dashboards. So we'll be finishing up with this School Manager 19. I hope you have enjoyed this series. So if you do like these trainings, I create these each and every Tuesday. I just ask a few things if you could do to help us out. And one would be just to go ahead and click that like button, and don't forget to subscribe and click that notification icon. That's going to ensure that you get these trainings each and every Tuesday. This workbook is absolutely free. All you need to do is click on the link down below, either with your email or Facebook Messenger, and we're going to get that sent over right away to you. I create these applications for you to help you create your career with Excel, creating amazing applications and learning how to sell them. In fact, I've got a course just geared to that. That is called the Excel for Freelancers Mentorship Program. That is a comprehensive course. We're building an incredible accounting application from all the way from concept to cash. It's well over 130 hours of incredible content lasting many, many months. If you want to get a start on that and want to know what it's all about, I've got a promotion, and it's going to include 8 hours for just $7. That's a temporary promotion that we have. $7 will get you the first 5 weeks of that, modules of that, and it's going to be up to 8 hours and all kinds of great details. So if you want to check that out, I'll include the link down below as well. All right, let's get started. We've got a lot to cover, so this is what I'm doing. I've already created a start screen. This is the sample. We're going to have a log in and log out, so we're going to be able to log in. Once we log in, we're going to determine exactly what screens the user can be displayed through the admin screen here based on this view. If it's hidden, they're not going to be able to see it once they log in. So we're going to be creating that. Once we get to that, we're also going to be showing you which users can then edit, which ones cannot edit. If it's hidden, right, or it is edit view, they cannot. If it's hidden, they cannot edit it. If they can only view it and not edit it, then they can no longer add or update teacher records, students, classes, or whatsoever. So again, only with those edit rights do they have full rights to that. If it's only view, then they cannot add students or new students or classes or whatever, new records, depending on the sheet. And so we're going to loop through that. So we're going to cover that. And then also once we do that, then I'm going to show you how you can use Dropbox, a free file sharing, to create your own automated database where you can share this application automatically with as many users in the world. All you need is any version of Excel to do that. So it's going to be with the free Dropbox software. I'm going to show you how to do that. We've covered that in a few trainings before, but if you haven't caught it, we'll have an updated version with you, a streamlined version with a lot less code, and it's going to be really easier if you have seen it before. So that's going to be really cool. All right, let's throw away this sample one. We don't need it. Well, we don't need to throw it away. We'll just close it for now. We might need it in the future. All right, thank God I'm not out of memory, just the computer. All right, we're good to go on that. So basically, I've just created this screen. This is the new start screen. All these buttons aren't doing anything. They're not tied to any macros yet, and I just created this. We don't need to be creating this level from scratch because it's just a screen, it's just text, it's just an icon, right? And it's just buttons, right? When we're up to 19, we know how to do this already. Okay, so basically the idea is we're going to go through this admin screen. I've added some features to help us, and we're going to be creating that login form that you saw. We'll be doing that. It's just a basic login form. Of course, we can get a lot more technical when it comes to forms, but the idea is not necessarily to go over how to create amazing forms, but more like how to create a really cool login feature. So we're going to do just that. Okay, so how are we going to do that? We've got a few new fields here. I want to know when this application is being synced, so I've added that in here. So it's just going to be a true or false, and I'll go over why we put that in here. I also want to know what the current user is logged in. I want to know who is currently logged in. I also want to know if they've entered a database name. I want to know the entered username, so I just pasted that in here. So basically, when they add a form, I want that username form field to go directly in here. And I also want the password that they're using, I want that password to go here. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to determine the row. What row is this? And we'll use a formula. All we need to do is just base it on the username that's entered. I want to know what row, in this case 7, that's located, right? So if the username, if they've put in username Fredders, it's going to change to 6 if I spell it correctly, which is doubtful. Okay, there we go. So 6. So basically, and I also want another formula if it's correct password. So I've just put these formulas in here to save us a little bit of time because they're really direct. All we did here now, if you remember way back on the first episode, our passwords are stored in column DD. That's actually hidden, but let's go ahead and unhide that. That's where our passwords are stored. So if we take a look all the way over here, we can see, oh, here they are all the way in DD. DD, this is where our passwords are stored. So we need to look up that password. That's going to be hidden, of course. There the passwords are stored. So all we're going to be doing is using indirect DD, and based on whatever row, we're checking it. If it equals the same password that they've entered, 18, then in B18, then we know it's true. Otherwise, it's false. So as soon as we change this number, it's going to go to false, meaning it's not a correct password. So now our job is all we need to do is create a simple user form. That simple user form is simply going to add that username here, simply going to add that password here. Then the first thing I'm going to do inside the macro is I'm going to check to see if this is blank. If it's blank, why would it be blank? It would be blank if they entered the wrong username. Notice it's wrong, and we should wrap an if error around it. You really don't want to have errors on there, so I like to wrap them on if errors too, just in case, because if VBA sees them, it could bug out. So okay, let's update that. And so we want to make sure that we want to do that. If there's an error, so that means the username, we know the username's entered incorrectly because there's no username row. So as soon as they enter it correctly, it is then going to be properly seen. And so we can use that to determine inside VBA. We'll check here. Is B19 blank? If it's blank, it's an improper username. Also, if this is not true, if it's blank or if it's false, then we know that it's incorrect password. So we're going to use that to determine whether we have a correct password. All we need to do right now is just build up that simple user form. So let's do that. We're going to go into the VBA, and then we don't have any user forms here. Notice, but we're going to right click anywhere here, and we're going to insert a user form. Now again, we can get a lot more beautiful and technical with these user forms. That's not the point here. It's simply just to create a simple user form that can log in, right? We can do more technical later on. So all we're going to do is just going to call this login. I'm going to call this login form, and then I'm going to give it a visible name here. So under the user form right here, just going to call this login. And that's fine. That's enough for our purposes here, form. Okay, so we've given a login name. I'll give it a background color similar to what we're focused on here, and then I'll just use this like a gray color, or probably a little bit lighter than that. So it's similar to our theme. Now what I'm going to do is create just a title here. So I want a text box here, and we're just going to call it something simple called login. So I'm going to give this a label name called login, and then label. And then what I'm going to do here in the caption here, I'm just going to call this in capitals login. And then, of course, I want to make it look a little bit bigger, so I'm going to update that font. First of all, we're going to center that. Just double click on here, center that. And then also in the font, color is black, that's fine. In the font above there, let's put some big and then put like 16 in bold. Okay, that should be fine for now. That's all we need. Now what I want to do is I want to create some labels. First we need username, and then we're going to need password. So we're going to do just that. I'm going to clear here, right about here, and then we're going to call this username and then label, just for short label, and then we'll give it the caption of username. And then what we'll do is we'll format this accordingly, and then we'll copy that. So once we get the formats right. So the color's fine. The font we're going to increase to, so say 11, and then okay, that should be fine for the username. I like that the way it is there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy that, Control C, Control V, and I'm going to make this one the password. So we're going to call this password LBL, and then we're going to give it, instead of username, password. Okay, now we're ready to create our field. So now we'll just put in a text box here, right about the same size, and just leave some space for that. And then also what I'm going to do is we're going to change the font on that here. So the font, we're going to also update that to 11, the same as that. And then we're going to call this username. And then also we're good to go on that. So what, not giving that the name. And then what I'm going to do again, I'm just going to copy this particular one and then paste it over here. This is going to be for our password. And what we'll do is we'll line these up so that everything's looking good right here, and then bring them to the front. Let's line them up. I'm going to bring these. We don't need all this here. There we go. Okay, so let's line these up horizontally here. And then I like that. That looks good. Now all we need is the buttons here. So we got password, username. I can shrink this. We don't need it this big here. There we go. That looks good. And now just some buttons, one for OK and one for cancel. It's going to be a very simple form we're going to be focused on here. So command button here, and just put in, let's put in a big OK button here. We'll call this OK button. And then we're going to give it this particular caption of just OK. Also, in this case, what I want to do is obviously increase the font considerably. And then this will go to, let's say, 14 on this one, and maybe bold. Okay, good. I like that. That's a little bit too much, huh? Okay, maybe not bold. Okay, maybe regular. Okay, that looks good. And then we need one for cancel. And then I'm just going to copy that and paste this and bring it down here. This will be for our cancel. And then we're good to go on that. So we're going to change this to cancel button. And then what I'm going to do is just give this the title in all caps, cancel. Okay, so basically all they're going to be doing is just simple adding their username and password, clicking OK and cancel. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Saving our work so far. If we take a look at this, we just to make sure we've got username, we've got, let's update this to password. This text box should be password. All right, so now all we want to do is assign the macros for this. So we've got our form name, we've got login, username, password, click OK. Okay, let's line these up a little bit just so we can do that, and then align them to the left, which I'll do here. So that looks better. Now they're both the same. And we can shrink them up a little bit. Okay, good. All right, so that's a good form. If we want to see what that looks like, right, all we need to do is move this over, run that, and we see that it looks just fine. Tabbing it over, it goes to the OK. Perfect. That's all that I want. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to assign some macros on this. In the cancel, all we're going to be doing this for the cancel button, all we're going to be doing is hiding that form. So login form.hide. That's all we need to do for that one. Now for the OK, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a macro when they do that. So for the OK, if we want to know the OK button, it's this button here. When that one's clicked, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this user, and then we'll do login check. So we want to actually run a macro that's called login check. And then that's the macro. So now what I want to do is I want to create a brand new module where we're going to check for that user. And if it's correct, then we are going to log them in. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click here and click insert. And I'm going to insert a brand new module. We'll call this user macros. So here, user and then macros. That's fine. Okay, so now we're ready to write this user macro. So we want to know exactly what we're going to be doing and how we're going to be running it. So first thing I want to do is I want to add in a sheet, some strings. So first thing is dimension, let's call this the sheet name as string, because once they are going to log in, we're going to need that. So I also want to know some variables, right? We're going to need to know the user row. Let's dimension that. Mention the user, run a user column, user row as long. And then I'm going to call it user column as long. Why do we need a column? We understand, I think we understand why we need the user row. I need to know what user row. But I'm going to have to loop through these columns. I'm going to need to loop through all these sheets and either show or hide them based on this. If it's hidden, we're going to hide it. If it's anything else, we're going to show it. So what columns do we have to loop through? Equals column, we're going to take a look at that, starting at 26, going all the way over to column, in this case, 34. So we need to loop through 26 to 34. Once they're properly logged in and they have the right username and they have the right password, then we need to loop through those and either show or hide the sheets. Now, because we titled these admin students exactly the same as our sheet names, we can use this, right? So it's kind of nice. We've titled our sheets exactly. So I can use the labels here in row 5 to show or hide those sheets based on the sheet name. So that's kind of helpful. All right, so let's continue back in the code and write that macro. So the first one is going to be user login, right? So we're going to log in, and then so we have user log out. So we're going to be doing that. And we also want to make sure that they have the right password. So let's do that. Actually, let's just change this. I'm going to view the code here. Let's just view code here. Let's do just login. I'm just going to do login, and then that's fine. That's enough. That's sufficient for our purposes. Okay, we can close that out. We can close this out and continue on. So sub user and then login. Again, once they're logging in, basically what I want to do is I want to just show the form, right? All I want to do when they're logging in is show the form. So I'm going to change that back again. Log in. Once they log in, form, and that's show. And that's simply the macro that is going to run when we click that login button. So that's the macro. When they click on that start, it is this macro that is going to be tied. So we can now tie that specific macro on that. So when we click assign macro and then we go down to user, actually I had it right the first time, user login. That's what I want. Okay, so they click on that and login form shows. That's what I want. Perfect. So what do we want to do? Let me just change that the way it was because I want to double check that. You can double click here on that, use login, check. Okay, I like that. Keep that the way it was. Now we're going to write a macro for just that. Okay, so back into the users here, login form, all it's going to do is show sub, and then I'm going to paste in that login check. Now, once they click OK, we're going to check, does their username and password match up? So that's going to be the check. So how do we do that? Well, for this, again, we want to do, I want to do a few more things. I wanted to mention also a few more things. Let's go back in there. So what do I want to do? I want to do if, I want to check to see if that, these are if, the login, check to make sure they've entered values into that username. Check to make sure they've entered values for that password. So that's the first thing. If any of those are left blank, we need to let the user know. Login, in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to call out the form. Login form dot, right? What field do we want? Well, first of all, we're going to check for username, right? That's the field. Dot value. If it equals blank, or if the login, or if we have to check the password too. Login form dot password. Remember, that's the name we just signed, password. Here it is. Dot value equals blank. Then we're going to, a message box. We're going to send them a message saying, please make sure that the username, we can capitalize that, username and password fields are not left blank. Okay. All right, I like that, and that's going to work. Okay, so that just ensures there. Now, once we know that they're not blank, we want to check both. First, let's check the username. Is the username correct? Well, what we want to do now is I want to take those values, that username and that password, and I'm going to place them directly inside the admin screen. I want to place them right here. I want to take the username that was entered, and I'm going to place it directly inside B17. I'm going to take the password, and I'm going to enter it directly in B18. So we can do that right now. So it's going to be start out with admin, that's the sheet name, dot range, B17, dot value equals what? Equals basically the one we just did right here. Login form username value. That's all we need to do. Copy this and paste it in here. And that's going to be the username. Okay, the password is going to be relatively simple, except that's going in B18. So we're just going to place those values directly in the cell. So B18 is going to take on our password. And that one right here is called password. Okay, so that's the password. Oh, it's self-explanatory. Now that we end there, now I just want to make sure, although it's going to calculate, just want to make sure we got some formulas, just in case we decide one day to turn off calculations. We want to force the calculations. I want to force, what am I forcing? I want to make sure that this formula and this formula automatically calculate. This formula is going to tell us if the username is correct. This formula is going to tell us if the password is correct. So now what we're going to do is we've calculated, we're going to check B19. If B19 is blank, then we know that is incorrect username, so we can let the user know. So inside that, we're going to say if dot range B19 dot value equals empty, then message box, please enter a correct username. Exit sub. Okay, right, and incorrect. So now I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to use it for the background. And this should make it change a little bit. So this is, we'll call this username check. And we're going to call the next one password check. Okay, and for the password, that's going to be based on B20. It's not going to be based on if it's blank. All I want to know is if it does not equal true, right? Remember, if it's blank or if it's false, then it's an incorrect password. Please enter a correct. Instead of username, we're going to call this password. Should be consistent with my capitalizations, right? This should be username. It depends, as long as you're consistent. But password, okay. And my spelling should be password. All right, we got that there. So password check, we're checking to make sure password, exit sub, right? We're not moving on if they don't have anything right. Now, assuming that we've gotten beyond that, we know both the username and the password are correct. So now what can we do? Now we're ready to log in the user. Log in the user. So now the first thing we want to do is hide that form. Login form.hide, right? We can hide it. We no longer need that form. And we can set the user row. We've already defined the user row as a variable up here. So what I want to do is just take that user row and assign it to whatever's in B19, because we have that here, right here located in B19. So I can copy this. I've got .at. Notice I've got .net. I really should do with admin, okay? So right, if I've got .net, so because we're using the admin, so again, let's move all of this inside with, and then we don't need this anymore. We don't need this anymore. And we don't need this, but we already have it here. So it was really inconsistent. So .b19, this is with the admin. Now we're focused primarily on the admin. Okay, so the user row is going to be equal to B19. That's the user row. So that's very important because we're going to need to determine what rights that user has, user row. Once we know that user row, what I want to do is I want to set the current user. I want to take whatever is inside here, the login name, I want to place it directly inside B16. So basically, I'm just going to say B16 is equal to B17. So I'm just going to copy this here and then make the updates accordingly. So place it here equals, and then B. So basically, B16 is equal to B17. That's going to set the current user. Set current username. Okay, so now that we have the current username inside B16, we are ready to do. First thing I want to make sure is when we hide, keep this in mind, we're going to be hiding or showing certain sheets based on this. Just in case, we cannot hide. If I try to hide admin and we're currently on it for any reason, right, it's going to create a bug. So I just want to make sure that this screen is currently available, and I want to make sure it's currently activated. So to do that, we just need to make sure that we're activating it. So I'm going to do that start.activate. Start. Notice IntelliSense didn't come up. Let me fix that right here. Didn't come up because I haven't labeled that sheet here inside the properties. So we'll do just that. Let's go inside the properties here and call this, instead of sheet 2, we're going to call this start. Now, now IntelliSense will show up. Now notice it comes out activate. So I want to activate that start. That's good. So now what I want to do is, now that I've activated, I'm ready to go through it. So I'm going to put a little note here. Why are we activating? Activate start sheet to make sure we can hide or show other sheets. Good. We can close this out. Now I'm ready to run my loop. So what do I want to do now? I'm going to run a loop, and it's based on that admin. So we know the row. So I'm going to run that loop from 26 all the way to 34. And if the sheet name, I'm going to check this sheet name. If it's hidden, then we're going to hide it. Otherwise, we are going to show it. So we can do that with just a single line of code after we enter the loop. So first of all, for user column, our long variable, equals 26 to 34, and then always close the loop. Next user column. So once inside it, we're going to run a check. First of all, we need to set the sheet name. What's the sheet name? Is going to be equal to .cells, because we're focused on the admin. And then what is it? It's in the row 5. Remember, all of our sheet names are located right here in row 5. Right? We're going to go through that 20. So now all I need to do is determine that from 26 to 34. So we can set that sheet name in a variable. 5 is the row. The column, of course, is variable based on the user column dot value. It's going to set sheet name to a variable. And once we have that sheet name, then what we can do is we can either hide it or show it based on the current value. So if dot cells, we know the row is going to be the user row. We know the column is going to be user column dot value, okay, equals hidden. Then we need to hide it, hidden. Then what do we want to do? I want to set it to hidden. So how do we do that? We can do it like this. Sheets. And what is the sheet? I usually like to do this workbook just to make sure this workbook, but double check in case you have multiple workbook. Dot sheets, okay. And then what is the sheet name? Of course, it's that variable sheet name. Dot, and then what do I want to do? I want to set the hidden property. So how do we do that? Well, it's going to be the dot visible property equals, in this case, XL sheet very hidden, very hidden. We want to hide that sheet in very hidden. Okay, else we want to show it. Now, very hidden means, what does that mean? It means that it's hidden, they can't unhide it, right? If they go in here and they right click here, that unhide, that it won't be visible, right? When they see that, I know it's off the screen, but you get the point. That hidden, it won't be. The only way that they can unhide it is through VBA, through one of the properties here. If they click on a sheet here and they see it, it's this property right here. The three properties are visible, meaning they can see it, hidden, meaning they can unhide it by right-clicking on the sheets, or very hidden, that they can only hide it through the VBA module here, through the VBA editor here. Okay, so those are the three. Else, what do we want to do? I want to show it. So in this case, we can just, I'm just going to copy this right here, so we don't need to rewrite it, and then I'm going to make sure that that's visible. So else, in this case, .xl, in this case, is going to be sheet and then visible. Okay. That looks good. So basically, let's just bring this over here. So let's take a look at that. If the user row equals hidden, then we're going to visible equals sheet very hidden. Else, this workbook sheet name visible equals sheet visible. We're just showing or hiding based on those properties. That's all we have to do. Okay, so once we've done that, we show or hidden the sheets based on their specific security rights. All we need to do is just show the logout button and hide the login button. Let's take a look at those buttons on the start screen. So what I want to do with this particular login button, they're logged in, so we're not going to log in. That's already called login button. So I'm going to hide that button. And then in this logout button, already called logout button, I'm just going to show that button. So all I need to do is just write that up, and then we're good to go. So we're already on the admin, so we do need to hit start because we're focused on the admin dot. And then shapes, in this case, it's going to be login button dot visible equals, right, MSO false. We want to hide that login because they're already logged in. And then the logout I want to show. So I'm just going to copy that, change it to log out here, just give it that the different name there, logout. And this one, of course, is going to be true. We want to show the login button. So that's it. So now we're good to go. Okay, so I'm going to save our work and we're going to test this out. So login check and we'll see how we're doing. Okay, but let's update a few of the properties here. Just want to make sure in the admin, see who we'll log in under Fred, and then I want to make them visible except for one, so we can test it out. I'll make teachers hidden, scheduling, this is good, this is good. I'll make these view and then these view or edit, either one, view or edit, but for this case, they're not hidden. Okay, so now when we log in under Fredders, the only sheet that we want hidden is teachers. And right now we can see teachers is visible, so we want to do that. So we're going to go into start, and then we're going to log in. We're going to put in the name Fred in the Fredders. And then I want to just give it that password. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is the password I hidden. So now we don't want to see the password. I'm going to show you how to do that. We're going to click OK. Let's debug that and fix that. This workbook equals sheet, Excel sheet, hidden. All right, take a look at that. That looks right. Scheduling, that's not correct. Our sheet's name is not scheduling, right? It's schedule. Let's double check the sheet name on that. In case you have a sheet name, just check on that. So take a look at our sheet schedule. It's called schedule. So we just need to make the update on the header there in the admin to make sure that it's called schedule, not scheduling. Schedule, which is no problem. Update, let's reset the code there, and then we'll update that accordingly. Okay, good, and call this schedule, not scheduling, which is fine. And then we'll go through the code again. Let's redo the code. Let's go back into that code and run that again. And then just this macro I'm going to run again. Okay, please make sure username and password are not left. Okay, we need to run the login again. That's a good thing. I want to do that here. Login, okay, Fredders. And then oh, let me just show that real quick. Let's hide those password characters, so we don't want to see the password. So I'm going to log in for this one right here. We're going to go to properties, right? We have here inside here, take a look at this. Inside the password character here, what I'm going to do is I'm put an asterisk there, right there, password character. So now when we run it, it's going to be automatically hidden, and that's what we like. So log in. So again, Fredders. And we'll be able to save that in the future and then click OK so that we don't have to put it in. Okay, so now it's logged out. That's the way I like it. I don't see teachers here. It is hidden. That's the way I like it. It's not hidden, but we're going to do something a little bit otherwise. Take a look at this. Okay, so teachers is not there, which it shouldn't be. Everything else is there. Perfect. Now, that's the way I want it. Okay, so take a look. I'm going to bring this up here so we can see it. If we right click here, we see we can't unhide. There's nothing to unhide. Even though teachers is hidden, it's very well hidden. You can see it isn't, we can't unhide it. And that's the way, exactly the way we want it. So we want to make sure, so the only way we can unhide it is if we go into the teachers here, right in here, this teachers here, and we see that it's very hidden. The only way we could change it is visible here. Of course, we can also run the macro again and make it visible. Okay, so that's working just the way I want it perfectly. And now that we're able to log in and log out, and we're showing the login, now when we log out, let's write the macro that we're going to log out. So let's write that right now inside this one. And let's go back, close this out, and go back into the users, which is this one that we want. And we're going to write the macro right down here. We're going to call it sub user, and then log out. So the best thing to do when you want to log out is basically what I want to do is I just want to show that particular start screen and I want to hide everything else. So the most important point is when you're hiding other sheets, you want to activate one sheet that you're not going to hide. So that sheet that I'm going to activate is called start, right? That is the one that I want to make sure to activate. I want to show that first. And what I also want to do is I want to update these login buttons. So in this case here, I want to do the opposite. In this case, show the login button and I want to hide the logout button. Okay, so that's just going to do it right there. So that's the first thing from our start screen, so we can do that. What else do we want to do? I also want to, again, run a loop. So I'm going to copy this particular loop. We've taken the variables and we've saved them outside all the way up here, so they're good for every macro. In this case, we're going to run another column. In this case, I also want to define the sheet name. But in this case, I'm going to make it very hidden. I want to hide all of the sheets, right? All of the sheets. So how are we going to do that? All I'm going to be doing is just do this right here, copy this, or just get rid of that. No if statement, we're just hiding. Now, of course, the database sheets, remember those sheets that contain database, those are always going to be hidden. So anything that says like exam database or anything like that's always going to be hidden. Users will never see that. Email database, log database. So there's no reason to see those. They're always going to be hidden. So it's no problem on that. Okay, so in the logout, so what we're going to do is we're going to hide it. We don't need the rest of this. So all we're going to be able to doing is just basically hide every sheet, but at least all those sheets from 26 to 34. Hiding everything, and that's all we need. So let's take a look at that. So I'm going to, of course, save our work and then assign that particular macro to the logout. So right click and assign that macro. It's user and then this one called log out. Okay, click OK. And when they log out, let's do that. We'll specify the sheet name on here, admin. And that's good. Okay, so we just need to specify the sheet. That's fine. And then run that, and let's take a look at that. Now, obviously, our databases we didn't hide, and they're always going to be hidden. So, but everything else is hidden, right? All the teachers, the classes, the schedule, the notifications, all the sheets are hidden. That's exactly the way I want it. The rest of these sheets would be hidden. Perfect. So we're going to log in one more time. Fredders. And then what we can do is password 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's hidden. Click OK. And then everything's back and displayed. Okay, there's one more thing we have to do. Notice if I hide a sheet, or we have a menu here, keep this in mind. If there's a menu, if I click on students, I can't go to this sheet if they're not allowed to visible. So what I need to do is I need to go to the students and I need to check, is there a specific are we allowed to view it? So what I need to do is inside, let's say the admin or every sheet, I need to put a true or false. Should we hide it? And I put it up here already. And so basically what I want to do is I want to look inside the user row. Now I'm going to create I think we've created a name variable called user row. This is the user row. So what I want to do is I want to look up column Z. If this says hidden and we're on the row, if it says hidden, I want this to go to true. Notice it went to true there. And here it's view, it went to false. So basically what I want to do is I want to look, does this user have visible rights to this current sheet? So I want to put that in B1 of every single sheet, of all sheets. Students, teachers, schedule, classes, exam, transition, notifications. So that's what I'm going to do. So in each sheet, the only thing that's going to change is this, direct. So all we're going to do is use the indirect formula. I'm going to look up the user row and the admin Z, and I'm going to find out, is it hidden? If it is, put true, otherwise false. So all we're going to do, and I'm going to do the same thing, so I'm just going to copy this here. In fact, students, of course, is going to be row A8, so we're going to do that, and luckily we have everything available, so we can, this is just a label, we can move that out of the way, we don't need that. So in this case, of course, it's going to be AA, right? Students is AA. And if we look back on the admin in teachers is AB, so we can do just the thing in AB, and then we can go back into, let's say, where did my teachers go? Here, teachers is hidden, of course, view, but that's okay. We'll put it back to view. We know that that's working. Let's go back in and make sure that that's visible here. We don't want that. So I'm going to, again, right click on that. You can go to the properties on that here, and then just make sure it is visible. Okay. And so now we've got it visible. And so in teachers, right, we all want to do the same thing, but in teachers it's going to be column AB. So I'm going to paste that in. Let's copy it one more time. Copy that here, both of those things, and go into teachers. And I'm going to do the same thing for each and every sheet. I'll do that right now and then be back. Okay, now we're good. Now I've got that same true or false, basically hide or show the sheet on B1. B1 is the same one, whether it's teachers, whether it's schedule, classes, exams, I've got transactions, notifications, and dashboard. So even the dashboard, I haven't done anything yet, but that's okay. So now we're going to show everything. So now all we need to do is add something to this menu. Remember this menu? I need to check when we click on here. If we click on this menu here, if we click on students and it is false, then we cannot allow them to select that. So because these are going to be hidden at the bottom, we won't even see these. So the only way they can get to it is by clicking this, but we can't allow them if it's true. If we're hiding that sheet, hidden, that's true. If it's true, we cannot show it. If it's false, then we can show it. So we just want to know if we should hide it or not. So how do we do that? Well, we add that into the applications. So that's going to be down here inside the admin here, application macros here. And it's just this menu. Remember we had this one single, I think it was on first one we have. So now instead of activating, we just need to run a check. If, in this case, we can just go to here, we want to know what is the sheet name. Well, we know the sheet is based on the application caller. If the sheet's application caller, this is the sheet, dot range, we put it in the same cell in every single cell, so that's quite helpful, dot value equals true, then what do I want to do? Message box, you do not have let's say access rights to this sheet, please check. And when I type in with, it's going to automatically with your administrator. And then exit sub. That's exactly what I want. We can get rid of this loop and this end with. Those are automated because of auto hotkey. When I type in do, it automatically types it in. When I type in with, sometimes usually it's good, but if I'm typing in some things that can be kind of annoying when I'm typing in using words like do and with, right? They automate it. We can close this out. Okay, so now again, if we don't have rights, so let's try that out and see how that's working. Let's assume that we don't have rights to the student. So I'm going to call that hidden, right? Now, if we look on the students, we're going to see that it's true, right? It's hidden. We cannot see it. We should hide the sheet, just like it is in admin here, right? So if I try to click on admin, it's going to say, even though we're on admin, so it doesn't really make sense. So let's say I try to click on students, it's not going to allow me. But if I try to click on teachers, it's going to allow me. If I try to click on students, again, it's not going to allow me. It's going to say, hey, you don't have rights. Okay, so that's a great way of how we can log it. And remember, they won't have access. We can hide these sheets. We can hide all these tabs so they cannot get to it from there. So I'll make them visible for our purposes. Great. So we've got that. In fact, we'll change it to view or edit it in the meantime. So now we understand the user, but now what I want to do is I want to know if they can edit these. So let's try students. If they have view, let's say I only want to be able to change a student or update students if this is edit. If it's not, then we should not allow them. So how are we going to do that? Well, we can do that inside the update students. So how do we do that? I'll do it for students and then you can do it for the rest because it's very, very simple, but it's the same for all of them. So if we take a look inside here, students miscellaneous, we have the save or update. We're checking for a few things. So again, all we need to do is define the user row. We can do it up here, user row as long. And we know the user row is going to be based on the admin, or we also have it inside a variable so we can use that, right? Let's take a look at that inside the admin. Here under B19, I believe it is here, we say user row. So we know that it's rows row. So let's take a look at that and put it inside a variable here under save and update. So we'll do the user. In fact, I don't want to do the same variable as the same. Let's do this, just call this something else, anything else, because we run into issues when we have the same named range exactly as the same, so I want to make it slightly different. In this case, user row equals, because we notice that the named range is exactly the same, so I'm just going to use it slightly different. I've run into problems with that before. User row, so we set the user row to equal user row. Now, if admin dot range, what is it? What we're looking at? What column is it? In this case, I believe it's AA. Let me double check that. I think it's AA for students. Pulling that up. Okay, so we know the students are AA, right? So if AA does not equal edit, then we know it's a problem, right? So we need to make sure that AA is an edit. So AA and the user row dot value does not equal edit, then let the user know, message box, you do not, again, here we go with the do not have editable rights. And this is for add new or update rights to this student. Okay, I'm not going to use the word with again. Okay, so again, let's get rid of that loop that came with the do and then exit sub. Okay, perfect. So now I'm going to, again, save our code. Let's take a look at that here. Inside the students, let's make sure, let's just go to view. Let's say we only have viewable rights to the students. We go in here to the students, and now we try to update it. It's going to say we do not have editable rights to the students. We go back into the admin. We change this to, of course, let's say edit, and then we go back into the students and we can make the update accordingly. Okay, there's no issue with that. All right, excellent. So now you can just duplicate the same line for every single one. The only difference is we need to change this to AB. Make sure you add it. Okay, I'll be adding that in the future, but for the training purposes, there's no reason because it's exactly the same on every sheet, except for this column. Just change to AB or AC or whatever. Okay, so we got that. We understand that we can assign specific users visible rights and we can assign editable rights. But now what I want to share with you is I want to show you how a single user can make a change and have that change on all of the users for who's ever sharing this application, how you can share and sync it. It's a very, very powerful tool. And what we're going to be using to help us with this is called Dropbox. Dropbox is a fantastic free tool that you can use up to 2 gigabytes for free, which is great. It allows you to file, if you don't know Dropbox, it allows you to share files with anybody in the world. So they can have their own Dropbox account. You can have your own Dropbox account. All you need to have is a single folder that is shared among all of the users. So one folder shared, and it is that specific folder that you can create subfolders in. So example, you have your Dropbox account, I have mine, right? And then one folder in your is called, let's call it application folder. And then inside that application folder is shared with every single user you want to share. So the idea is that anytime you make a change on your application, whatever data you've made change, that's just the data itself goes into all of their folders. So for example, if you have 3 specific users, that specific change is going to go into all of the users except you, the current user. In other words, if you're Fredders and you make a change to a student, that change is going to go into this folder and this folder. New folders are going to be created for Lisa and one for David, right? So that changes. David is going to have his own folder, right? He's going to look for those changes. Any changes that he has from any other user, he's going to pull those changes out and he's going to get those changes and bring them in. So that means if Lisa makes a change, if Fred makes a change, those changes are going to go into David's folder. And the macro will check the folder regularly every 5 minutes, every 1 minute, every hour, every day, every week, however long you want to set it. And any changes those make, it's automatically going to update. So that's a really, really great feature. I've taught it before, but now we're going to make it even easier, and I'm going to show you how. Okay, so the important thing is, right, notice that we have inside the admin under the application settings, we do have a shared folder. Now keep in mind that I'm just using my desktop, but if this were a live training, I would be using a Dropbox folder. I would browse for a Dropbox folder, that same Dropbox folder that is shared with all the other users, right? So if you want to share that folder, like inside Dropbox, right, all you need to do is right click on a specific folder and you can share that, right? So then you would assign, basically get the other user's email, and then you'll just go ahead and share it. And so here it's coming up here. So then what you'll want to do is just email the users, just set up their emails and let them know, make sure it can edit, right? So you can add a message. So once they get this email, they'll approve it, and that means that specific folder is now shared among them. That means any changes they make come to you, any changes you make come to them. So as long as that one folder, remember they can have many folders in Dropbox, just that one folder needs to be shared with everybody, all the users, then all the changes will get there. So, and I'll explain how that's working, but just so you know, download this free software, create a brand new folder, call it application changes, call it anything you want. Then you want to assign every single user, put their email in, and make sure, of course, that they do the same. They can have their own account, or you can use a single company account. Either way, if you use a single company account, let's say you had everybody was using the same account, then you wouldn't need to share the folder, right? Because everybody would automatically get the same folder. So that's certainly possible. But another way to do it is if every user has their own Dropbox account and yet they're simply sharing one folder. So they have, let's say they have 10 folders in their personal things, but one of those folders is for the application. That one folder is shared with all the other users. Okay, so I hope that's clear. For our purposes today, I'm just going to be using my desktop because I'm only working off a single computer and I'm not sharing it. So I'm just going to be using on my desktop, and I've already set a specific folder here, and then we have it called user data. So what I'm going to do inside our application, we have our application. This is my desktop here. what I want the application to do is make sure that there is a folder called user data. That user data is going to contain all the folders. Each user will have their own folder. If it doesn't exist, VBA will create it. Once inside that folder, any changes made will be done. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing what I want to do is I want to make sure that any changes we make are put into a folder. So how do we do that? Well, we can do that. That's why we separate the front end and the back end, right? So let's go into student database and let's write a macro for that. So because any changes on the student database we want updated. But first, a few things need to hold true. This needs to be yes, right? It's called share and sync. This is the named range we've added. Share and sync must be yes. If it's no, then we don't need to continue. Okay. We also want to make sure that they're logged in. We need to make sure that there is a value here in the current user must have B16 must have value. Also, let me add to B16 when they log out, I want to make sure that this is put to 0. So I want to add that to the macro. It's kind of important. User, let's just go into here. User macros here. When we're clearing out, so we're logging out, I'm going to change admin.range B. Let's take a look at that. Making sure that we have the right sheet. B, in this case, 16 should be cleared out. Okay, I want to make sure B16, that way it will prompt them to log in. Dot value, or we just do dot clear content, dot clear contents. Okay, let's say clear out current user. And you can decide if you want to change everything, or you can do this, B all the way through B19. That's going to clear out all the passwords and all of the user data. So that's going to be good. So B16 to B19, if we do that, we're going to clear everything else. So that would mean the current user, the username, and the password. Sorry, 18. We need to go to 18, not 19. Okay, so let's do that. So that clears everything out on logout. I like that a little better, a little bit more secure. We don't need to save those passwords in here. Okay, so saving that, that'll happen on logout. Clear out current user info. So now that we've written up that, so what I want to do is I want to go into the student database here. That is, so any changes to student database, I want that automatically updated. So let's go into the student database. There's no code in here. So what I want to do is I want to basically any changes within the, now keep in mind that it's going to be any changes within just the data range. What do I mean by that? Sometimes we have other things on a data like advanced filters and things like that, but I want to make sure that only the original data, let's locate this. This thing's getting a little bit big here. Student database. Okay, here. So basically what I want to do is I don't want to focus anything on any changes here, right? Only want to focus on things that are up to, let's say, W. This is a formula. We can bring this formula down. That would probably be better so that we don't have to focus on that. If I bring that formula all the way down, that'll be only for new. So that's kind of nice. So then I can only focus on any changes all the way from A4 all the way down to W and then all the way down. So A4 all the way to W. So any changes to that, then I want to alert the other users that are changed, and I want to put that change inside other users folder. So how are we going to do that? We're going to write up just a little bit of a macro to do just that. So the first thing what I want to do is it's going to be based on a change event, right? If we actually make a change event, not selection change, but a change event. So we can clear this out. So what kind of change are we going to make? The first thing what I want to do is I want to dimension some variables. Dimension, let's say in this case, again, the user row as long, we're going to need that. And I also want to know the last user row as long. Why is that important? Because I want to loop through all of the users because we need to create folders for all. And if there's already a folder, I need to put in data in each of the users folders other than the current user, right? We don't need to change the current user's folder, right? So the last user, let's do this. The last user, make it a little more clear. Last user row as long. So we're going to need that. And also I want to know some string variables. So we're going to dimension, in this case, the shared folder as a string. And also I want to know the username, which is the current username, as string. And also the file path. I want to know, we're going to create a file. So file path as a string. I also want to know, let's take a look at this. Actually, what we're going to do is we're going to loop through the usernames, and I also want to know the current user. So separate the current user from the username. So we'll do that. Let's do it, the current user as a string. So we loop through the users, all the users, and the current user is different than all the users. Current user as a string. Okay, also we're going to need the file system object. So we're going to dimension the O file as an object, and also the FSO as an object, because we're using the file system object in this. Okay, so what do we want? So we're going to focus on a specific range. If the user makes a change to a specific range, right? And what is that range? Again, we just go over it, is that entire database, right? In this case, of course, it's A4 all the way through W and all the way down. So A4 and then W. So A4 through W, and then we'll just use a large number, 99, nothing. And remember, one other condition is we certainly want to make sure that sharing, we don't want to do anything else if sharing and sync is not right. So that's one thing. And I also want to make sure, let's say we make a change. Let's say there's a change that's made to this phone number, but that change was made from another user. In other words, so if another user makes a change, I want this database updated, this one right here. But this type of change, when another user makes it, I don't need to send that change back to the other user. Do you understand? I have to differentiate between two different types of changes. One is a change that's coming from other users. One is a change that I'm making that I'm going to send to other users. So I need to differentiate between those two types of changes. So I need to understand when we're bringing in changes from other users. I want to differentiate that. So how can I do that? Well, I can do that in the admin screen. And you saw it briefly before, but there's a specific cell that we're going to assign a true or false value, a Boolean value right here. I'm going to bring that student database all the way over here so I don't lose it again. I'm going to drag that all the way over here next to the admin, so otherwise I lose it. Okay, so the admin, so here it is again. We just went over that briefly here, called application sync, right, located in B6. This is going to tell us when I'm bringing in changes from other users, this is going to go to true, and then when I'm finished, it's going to go back to false. So I want to make sure that if the changes that I'm making, I want to make sure that B6 is false. So we're going to check on that as well. So nothing admin.range B6.value equals false. And one other thing, and I also want to make sure that sharing and sync share, let's do the value here, share sync equals, right, I want to make sure it's yes, right? We need to make sure that it's yes. Then we can do that. So basically all those things have to be true. We can bring this down. We're not going to use this too much. So again, the user has to make a change here. The type of change, it cannot be during when changes are brought in by other users. This will be true when that happens. And I want to make sure that the sharing and sync, that they're actually sharing and sync. Then we can do our work. Okay, so also we're going to focus only on a single cell at a single time. This only works with a single cell. So if target.count_large is greater than 1, then exit the sub. Right? Only works one cell at a time. Exit, then exit sub. Okay, only one cell at a time, and that's why when we're clearing contents, we loop through and clear those contents. Okay, so first of all, I want to check for the shared option. I want to make sure that we have a shared folder. Check for shared folder. We created a macro a while ago that makes sure that we have a proper shared folder, and that is basically inside the admin here, and I believe it was in miscellaneous here. And it was called here, this one, admin. All we're doing is we're checking to make sure that we have a correct shared folder. That is the shared folder that's located right here inside P6, also known as our app folder. We want to make sure that that's the correct path, because it's that path that we're going to have to save those changes in. So I'm going to run that macro, and that's going to do just that. So it's going to check for shared folder, and then I'll just, actually I can put this down here aside from it, save a little space. Okay, so once we do that, then what I want to do is I want to set the last user role. What I need to loop through all of the users, because I need to create information and I need to create changes for every single one of those, and that's located on the admin. Back inside the users, I want to do in this case, the last user row is 8. So it's going to be based on V, column V, and you're going to get the last user row. So that's where we have to put that inside a variable here. So the last user row is going to be equal to, in this case, V. We'll use V, okay? So now we probably don't need to go that high up, just a little bit less here. Okay, because we're not going to have that many users. So that's going to get us the last user row, because we're going to need to loop through all the user rows. And what is the current user? The current user, because why do we need the current user? Because I'm not adding anything to the current users folder, because it's already on their changes. So we don't want to do that. So we know that that's going to be the logged in user. We have that defined as a named range here called logged in user. So that's all we're using here. You can copy and paste it to make sure it's correct, and just paste that in here if it's not correct, just to make sure that it's correct. Okay, so that's the current user. Obviously, it's self-explanatory there with the variable. I also want to know the shared folder. That's again another variable, another named range. We just want our app folder. So that's the actual folder where everything's going to go. We're going to call that the shared folder. So that's going to be inside a variable. Okay, once we have that, I also want to know, to make sure that the current user, I want to make sure that we actually have a current user. Remember, it has to have a logged in. So if current user equals empty, then, right, message box, please make sure to log in or set sharing, just in case, sharing and sync to no. Okay, good. I like that. Exit sub, right? If we don't have a current user, we can't move on. Exit sub. Okay, good. So I like that just to make sure. And what else are we going to do? Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to make sure that we actually have users just in case it could be an issue. I doubt it, but just in case the last is less than 7, right? If it's less than 7, that means we only have 1 user. And if we only have 1 user, that's going to be the current user, so there's nothing we can do. No sharing sync. So a single user. So if the last row is less than 7, we can also exit the sub. If the last user row is less than 7, then exit sub. Okay. Exit on single user. All right, so now that we have multiple users, we can do that. So what I want to do is I want to double check, to make sure that the shared folder could create errors. So how do we do that? If the directory of the shared folder, I think that should be shared, not shared, shared folder. In this case, put it back in here, folder. And then we'll do VB directory. In this case, if it equals empty, then exit sub. Just runs a double check to make sure, because that way you're going to put shared folder. Okay, so now that we know we have a correct shared folder, and what I want to do is I want to check for user data. So what do I mean? I want to put all of the data inside a folder called user data. This folder right here. See this folder, user data. If it doesn't exist, I want to create it. So we can do that with a single line of code. And how we can copy this and then update this and then just add in the folder. So again, here, just copy that here. In this case, instead of shared folder, and I want to add in something here. In this case, quotations, user data. This is the folder that I want to create here, data, right? Is empty, then we should make it, right? So how are we going to do that? Then all I'm going to do is just copy this here. Then if it's empty, it doesn't exist, then make it mk directory. And what are we going to make? That's what we're going to make. We're going to make that folder there. That's going to automatically create it if it doesn't exist. Okay, so now that we know that it exists, now what we want to do is I want to create the user folder, right? We also need a user folder to make sure that is, but we're going to have to loop through that. So, all right, let's do that. So first of all, let's create that file scripting object before we start our loop so we can do it like this. So we're going to set the FS remember we created that, not FOS, FSO, I like FSO, file system object, right? File system object, in this case, equals, we're going to create an object, create object. What kind of create object? We're going to create a file system object, scripting, put that in quotations, scripting dot file system object. That's what we want to create. That's going to help us work with those folders. Object. Okay, so once we've created that, we can ready to create our loop. So we're going to loop through, again, we need to loop through all the users. For the user row equals 6 to last user row. The only thing I do want to skip, I want to skip the current user. Next user row. Okay, so let's do that. First thing what I want to do is set the username. The username is where? It's going to be based, of course, on column here. Our username is located in column V. So we're going to set that username into a variable. Username is equal to, and then let's do admin.range. In this case, we'll do V and the user row.value. It's going to set the username. Now all I want to do is if the username is equal to the current user, right? We don't want to do this for the current user. Then let's say go to next user. And then down here, right below here, we're just going to put in next user. Okay, so it's going to skip everything we're going to do if it's a current user. We only want to do this for every other user, not the current user. So what are we going to do? Well, the first thing what I want to do is I want to check to make sure that there's a directory. So I want to make sure there's a folder for that specific one. So I'm going to copy this right here, but I'm going to add something to it. So if shared folder user VB, this one I want to put in this time username. I want to make sure there's a folder name for that username. So if it doesn't exist, then add it, right? So I want a specific folder for every single user. So all we need to do is create it here. There we go. So if there's user data, username doesn't exist, then make directory, folder, user data, username, make that. Okay, so that's going to give it there. So that's going to add it there. And there we go. That's what I want. And, right, because it's in a variable. There we go. So that's it. So if it doesn't exist, then make it. So I'm going to copy that. So that's what we want to do. Make sure, because it's a variable here. Otherwise, it's going to create a folder called username, and we don't want that, right? We don't want a folder called, we want the actual, and this is a variable. Okay, good. So glad I caught that. Okay, next up. So now it's going to create, just in case it doesn't just create a folder. Now what we want to do is I want to take whatever change the user has made, and I want to place that change in a text file inside the folder so that other people can read it. And I want the name of that file very, very specific to the name of the sheet and the name of the cell that's changed. And that's way, if more than one user make its same change to the same cell, it automatically replaces itself. If I make a change to A1 and another user 1 minute later makes a change to A1 on the same sheet, their change will automatically replace my change in the folder. And that's exactly what we want. So we're going to set a file path for that specific. And it's going to be equal to, let's copy this, and then we'll just copy all of this here. File path is going to be equal to, paste that in there, and what else, right? It's going to be beyond that. And I want to know the worksheet name and the target.worksheet.name. So it's going to be the name, and it's going to be something else. And I want to put the underscore here, assigning that name, and I want the target address and the target dot address. And it's going to be a text file, right? So and then .txt. So I'm going to create a text file .txt with that name. So everyone's going to have the worksheet name and the target address with the underscore separating it, and then txt. So we're creating that text file, and we're going to create that text file. And inside that text file, all we do is going to put the value of the cell. So that's all we have to do. So now we're going to do that. Set O file, right? That's the object file, is going to be equal to the FSO. We've already defined that above. Dot, in this case, create text file. In this case, it's going to be the file path. Right? I want to create a brand new text file with the file path. Set O file is going to be create text file based on the file path. We've just set the file path up here. It's already .txt, so we're already good. So what are we going to do with that? So the O file is going to be dot. I want to write a line to that. O file. Let's do that right. File dot write line equals, what do I need? Just the target dot value. That is the value of the change. Whatever the change that's being made is, we're going to do that. Then all we need to do is close the file. O file, just like we would close any other file, dot close. So that's it. That's all we need to do. Next user and user row. So that means we're going to do that with every user. So very, very simple. So I'm going to save that here. Okay, and there's one more thing that I want to do here on, let's take a look in the user. I only want to, so let's say we update a student, right? This is based on the student database that we're working in right now, the student database. So what I want to do is when I go into the students, let's go ahead into the student miscellaneous here. When I save an update, right, I don't want to, notice we're going to change everything. I don't want to save something to the database if it exists already. If it's the same value, there's no reason to make the change again. So why don't we only make a change if it's different? So I'm going to copy this entire line. I'm going to put an if in front of it. Then I'm going to paste it. Then I'm just going to put then. So what am I looking for now? So I'm going to put does not equal. So basically what it will look like if what's currently in the student database does not equal whatever change we've made, then update this. This way we're only updating the database when we make an actual change, and save that. All right, so let's test out our work, and then we'll see if there's any issues that come up. So we're going to go into the students again. We're going to check it. I'm going to make a change here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6 Main Street. Okay, so I've only changed one, and now any updates, let's fix this. Add in the last user row is going to be based on admin sheet. We need to put in a sheet there. Continue on, and then fix this right line. Okay, we don't need an equals. In this case, we don't need the equals. There we go. Okay. Continuing on. Okay, let's take a look at that. That's it for the issues. Now we're going to move on. Okay, look, now we have 2 of them. That's what I want. Remember, there's 3 users, but we don't want to write anything for us, right? The current user, right? We have 3 users, but we are this. We only want to create folders and write lines for this. Now let's take a look inside that folder and see exactly what we've created. Take a look at this one. Okay, good. D18. So student, we've made a change to D18. What change did we make? Let's just look at that real quick inside the student database. Student database. D, column D, let's go all the way over to the left, column D, which is the address, that's what I want, 18, we've updated that to Main Street. Notice everything else we didn't change, we only changed one thing, Main, that's all we changed. And so let's take a look inside that file, inside that text file, and see what we have right here. So I'm going to open this up, and we'll take a look at this here. And I've got the text file. Let's drag it over here. I got a text file. Perfect. Inside this text file, the text file is called student database d18.txt. Is that value 125 Main Street? That's exactly what I want. So, and that goes to every single user. It goes to David Davis. It goes to Lisa Smith. So when they get, this is a shared folder, when they get this, what they want to do is they're going to go through their own folder. Any changes they make, they're going to look. They're going to know what sheet it is. They're going to know what cell it is. All they need to do is read the sheet, read the cell, and look inside and know that the value inside is Main Street and then replace it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to write a macro to read our own folder, and we're going to loop through all of the txt files in that folder and update any changes that we can. And that's in a very simple macro, and we're going to write that now. Okay, so back into there. All right, we've got application. I've got a module called application. There's not much going on in here. Why don't we add it to this, right? So the first thing what I want to do is I want to write a macro. And this macro, we can set it to run every minute, every 10 minutes, or however long we want. So it's going to work really well for us. So I'm going to create a macro called sub, in this case app, and then we'll call it check for user updates. That's fine. Check for other user updates. And first of all, we need to mention some shared folder. Of course, we're going to need to know that. Shared folder as a string. And also, I want to know the file path as a string. We need that because we need to know the full file path. And then also the file name. What is the name of that file? That sheet and cell name as a string. Also, what I want to do is the database sheet. We need to know what sheet that is as a string. And also I want to know the database row file, database row file, may need that. I'm not sure if we know that. File as string. We don't need that. We don't need these two. Sorry, we don't need those. Those are not going to be necessary. Let's get rid of that. Okay, that's going to be it. Any other variables I'll add there. I think we're good to go on that. But I do need some long variables because we're going to have to loop through that. So sheet name as string. I want to do the cell value as a string. We just know the value of that cell. And also I want to know, in this case, the cell address as string. Okay, probably a few more. Okay, let's continue on. Let's write some macros. We may need a few more. I'll update it as we need it. Okay, so the best thing we want to do is I want to make sure that share and sync is on. Again, if share sync does not equal yes, then we can exit the sub, right? We don't need to check for the user, then exit sub. If the share and sync is not on, there's nothing we want to do, so we can just continue on. Now what I want to do is, again, I want to run and make sure that we actually have a proper admin folder. Again, it's the same one here. I want to run the same macro again to make sure that we have the correct admin folder. So we're going to run that, check app folder. And once we know it's correct, if we do have it correct, then we can just, I also want to know, I want to make sure the logged in user is not correct. So then what would I want to do is make sure we have a logged in user, logged in user equals empty. If it's empty, then exit the sub. Make sure that we're logged in. Okay, so now we know we've got a logged in folder. We can then ready to go. So we can probably write that's okay. We can keep it that way. I was going to say a message box, but we're probably good to go on that. So let's update the current user. I'm going to add that in there as a string. I'm going to need that too. Current user as string. And then continue on. So we're going to put that current user is going to equal to the logged in user because that's important. I want to know which is the current user equals the logged in user. Once I have that inside a variable, I also want to set the shared folder also inside the variable. We know that that shared folder is located right here inside this app folder equals the app folder. That's the variable, right? That's our application folder. We've been through that a few times as well. So now that we have that, but I also want to update that. Not only this, right? I want to add on to that, right? We know it's going to be user data. So and, right? Put in the quotation marks. We know it's also going in user data. And what else? It's also going to be the user name. In this case, in quotation, and the username, right? So we're also going to put that in. But the username, we're going to have to define it. But this is the current user, right? And current user, not Suser, user, Randy. User, Suser, I like that. Okay, so we don't need that. Okay, and then so we got the current user. So we know I only want to look in this folder. Only our folder is what we're going to be looking at. So that's the only file path that I'm concerned about is our current folder. So the application folder, the user data, and the current user, that's our application folder. That's the one we're going to be looking in. So we're going to call that the shared folder. So let's call that application folder for current user. Once we have that, we can then make sure, now remember I said, once we make those updates, once I update our database, I want to make sure that those updates from other users, we differentiate. So what I need to do is set B6 to true, and then at the end of this macro, set it back to false. So we're going to do just that right now. So admin.range B6.value equals true, and then we might as well copy and paste it and then set it to false so we don't forget. Equals false. And I'm gonna put a note here. Just gonna set the let's call it set user sync to true, back to false. Okay, so inside here's where we're gonna make our updates. Here's we're gonna loop through all of the text files in our own folder, updating all of our own records. So we can do that. Now that we said, so we're gonna set the file name. So what is that file name? File name is gonna be equal to the directory. We know the shared folder, not two E's there, shared folder. And then what I want to do, and I also want to do anything that might end with .txt, and we're going to need that asterisk, our wildcard right there, .txt. So that's any file where it's contained. So that's, we're going to loop through all of that. Okay, now we're ready to start our loop as we loop through all the txt files in there. See, now this is where do comes in handy. I put in the word do and loop comes up automatically. Do while the length of file name is greater than 0. So basically we're doing it is we're looping through all of them. Start of loop, this is the start of loop. So do while, that's all we do while. Let's do while. We don't need white. There we go. Do while. So now as we do while, what are we going to do? First of all, we're going to set the file path. That file path is going to be equal to the shared folder and the file name. All right, we've already set the shared folder up here in the out folder user data, the current user. We've already set the folder. And now, so we're setting it up. So the shared folder and the file name, setting that file path. Once we have that full file path, because it's going to include the txt, then we can pull it out and see exactly what's inside. So we can do that as we can, first of all, I want to check to make sure that if for some reason there's a conflicted copy, if for some, it would include the parentheses or something like that. So just in case, we're going to do a check. If in string, right, if there's a conflicted copy, like for some reason, if one has it open, but it almost should never happen. Conflicted copies only happens when a file is open, but it should never be open. But just in case, if in string, we're just going to run a check for the file name, comma, we're looking for, let's say, the parentheses, the beginning parentheses here. In that case, what do I want to do? In that case, does not equal 0, right? If it exists, right? Does not equal 0, then what do I want to do? I want to skip that file. Skip, then go to skip file. I'm just going to go down here, skip file, just in case, because a conflicted copy, the file name won't be correct. So that just prevents some errors in case the file name is different. Now what we want to do is I want to extract that sheet name. Remember the sheet name here, if we take a look inside our file here, it's the sheet name is basically, we're going to look for that underscore. So everything before that underscore is that sheet name. So that's what I want to extract from the file name. So the sheet name is going to be equal to the left, where we're using left, and it's going to be left based on the file name. And where it's going to be? It's going to be the in string. We're going to look for that position of the file name. And it's going to be in string file name, the length plus the length of the file name, okay, minus what? Minus 1, because I don't want to include that underscore. That is going to be the sheet name. Okay, let's put in the sheet name. The sheet name is going to be equal to, let's start out with the left position. What I want the left of something, file name, and then we're going to use the in string. I'm going to look for that. What am I looking for? I'm looking for that underscore. So that underscore is going to be found in file name, comma, and then here's the underscore. So we're going to basically look for that. Once we find that, what I want to do is I want to subtract 1 from that, -1. So that is our sheet name. That'll extract that sheet name from the entire file name. Next thing, I want to extract the cell address. The cell address, a little bit more complicated. Cell address, so we can extract that. Basically, we want to parse the name. So the cell address is going to, first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to use the replace. Replace, in this case, the right, I want to use the file name, the length of the file name, the file name here. Again, minus what I want to do is I want to subtract out where that underscore is. So basically we're using the right and then we're replacing that. So I want to remove that. So in this case, it's going to be minus in string. What are we looking for again? In string, we're looking for that underscore, file name, the underscore, because that's our parser, that's our separator there, double quotes, and then comma. And then what I'm going to do is use .txt. .txt. We're just going to replace that, right? Because I don't need that txt. I want to remove that. And what am I going to replace it with? I'm going to replace it with nothing. So basically, I want to take out the txt because I don't need that as far as, because I just want a cell address. And basically, I'm looking for everything to the right of the underscore and taking out this. So once we take that out, all we're left with is the cell address. Okay, so now out of that file name, we've extracted the sheet name and we've extracted the cell address. Now all we need to do is get the value inside it. So how are we going to do that? All right, well, we can actually put it up here. Let's take a look. We'll put it up under the file path, and that's probably a better place to put it there. So what we'll do is we'll open it. I want to open that file path for input as #1. Basically, just the first line is all we're focused on here. The line input, that first line, what is that? Input here, #1, and I want to give it a variable called cell value. So basically what we're doing here in this case is simply looking in the first line of inside that file, we're assigning it a variable, and that variable is going to call cell value. Then all we're going to do is close it. So basically the first line opens it, the second line assigns it a variable, and the third line closes it, close #1. So that's it. Open file path for input as #1. We're only focused on the first line. That first line, we're assigning that variable called cell value. It's already a string variable up here. Then we're just closing the file. Okay, so now we've got this. So now we've got the cell value, I've got the sheet name, and we've got the cell address. We have everything we need. Now all we're going to doing is just simply taking that value and placing it in. So we do something like this. This workbook dot sheets, and then what is the sheet name? In this case, the sheet name is sheet name. We've already discussed that. Dot range, we know the range. What is that? It's going to be the cell address. And that cell address dot value is going to be equal to cell value. And that's going to actually replace the value inside it. So this workbook, sheet's name, range, cell address value equals to update cell value. That's it. Okay, so once we are done with that, we can then move on. Okay, so how do we do that? Now all we need to do, again, we skip file and continue this. So we're going to do that for every single, but the last thing what we need to do, just in case, is we want to make sure to kill the path. And I'm just going to put on error resume next in case there's an error. So I want to kill the file path, delete that, right? We don't need it anymore. Delete file path. Once we've used it, and then on error, go to 0. Okay, so we've got that. Now we do, so basically we're taking the value. Once we're done with that, we can kill the file and we can go to the next line. In fact, we could probably do this one here, skip file. I'll bring skip file up here, just so if there's any issues, we can kill any file that has an issue and then skip that. Okay, that's good. And then the last thing is I just want to clear out the variable of the last one so that we can loop through that. So the file name is going to equal directory. And basically what that does is it clears the directory and then it goes to the next one so that we can continue on our loop. That's it for the loop. Okay, that's it for pretty much the macro, except there's one more thing that I want to do. And here's why. If I update a student, let's say another user updates a student, or they update a student name. Let's say they update this. I want this drop down list automatically to update. So it's not enough that the database updates. Let's take a look inside the student database. It's not enough to add a new name here, or not enough to update a new name here, which the macro will take care of. But when that happens, what I want to do is I want to make sure that this formula and this name range, this list automatically updates. So I need to know when one user either they add a new student or they update a name, then I want to make sure that this list, this macro gets run for every single user. So what I want to do is I want to know when a user makes a change. So how do I do that? Well, what I've done here is I've set in here, right here in this area here, if a student name has been changed, I'm going to set this to true. If a teacher name change, and this is going to be either for a name change or a new name, right? So in that case, I want to set. So how are we going to do that? If there's a change, I want to set B29 to true. If B29 is true, so how are we going to do that? So let's go into the students here. And then, so basically it's going to be a change on either one of these or the full name, right? So here's the full name. Here's our full name in here. So if B17 is different than whatever is in, let's say here, then I know there's a name change. That would be for either the name change or for a new one, it's going to be different than the full name. So in that case, what I want to do is I want to then update this. I want to go this to true. When this is true, if this is true for any user, I want to update this. And I'll kind of explain it to you because I know it's multiple steps. Let's take care of the first step and make that change. So I'm going to go, before we continue on here, what I'm going to do is go into the students here. And I just want to know if we've made a name change. So student miscellaneous here. So here's where we're going to update this, right? But before we update our database, right, I want to know if it's different. The value that we have, is it different than what's in X? So how do we do that? If dot range, what's the value? What is that full student name? That full student name is located right here inside B17. If the value of B17 is different than the value of X and the student row, then I know there's some type of a name change. Either it's a new student or a name change. Either way, I want to mark this as true here, B29. So that's all we need to do. So how do we do that? So if B17.value does not equal, right, student database dot range X, that's the column, and the student row dot value, that means if there's some kind of a different name, new or change, then what I want to do, admin dot range, I'm going to set that value to true. And I'll show you why here. So here, in this case, that's going to be students B29, setting B29 to. We need to know whether we need to update the list or not, right? If one user makes a change to a student name, I want the list of all the other users. I want all the other users to automatically update their list, and I want to do it automatically. Dot range, and I'll show you how that's in dot range. B29 value equals true. Set student name change, or new name, new, to true. So that's all we're going to do. Just one line of code, that's all we need to do. If it's the same, then we don't need to do. So if we're just updating, it's not going to do any good. So it's not going to worry about that. So if all I do inside the students here is just click update, right? It's not going to change, which is fine, right? Here, not going to change. But if I make a change to that student, even just a slight change, I want it to change. So going back into the students, James Jackson, if I change this to Jackson and click update, I want to make sure inside the admin it goes to true. Here, so that goes to true. Okay, so that's what I want. So now we're going to continue back in. So now we understand that we have made a student name change. So now let's say another user makes it. It's going to change this. It's going to trigger for all the users. This is going to go to true for every single user. Okay? When it's true for every user, and let's say we've made the updates. Let's say we've brought in all the updates here. We've just brought in all the updates, and we see that B29 is true. If B29 is true, then what I need to do is run the macro that's going to resort those students. We've already updated the student information here. So now what we could do, if, let's do this, check for name changes or new names to, it's going to be for all, to sort list. I'll just keep it general like this, then I'll do more specific. So in this case, if admin.range B29.value equals true, then student, we're going to run that macro, student, and I believe it's sort names, yeah, that's the one. Okay, so sort names. So there we go. That's all. Then it's going to run the macro. And then, of course, at the end of it, what we'll do is I'll change all the values to false. So there's sort names, resort student names. And we basically need to do the same thing for every single one of the lists, and that's going to keep all the lists updated. And we'll see it in action soon. But basically, all I'm going to do is the same thing for teachers, same thing for classes. So again, resort, let's just copy this, and I'm going to paste it right down here. And then we just need to change it. This is going to be B30, 31, 32, 33, 34, and that's it. Okay, so now we're just going to change them and make the updates. 30, This will be for 31, and that's why we want to keep the macros relatively similar names so that they're easy to remember. And of course, we can always go look, 32, 33, and 34. So now that we have that, so this is, in this case, B30, we're going to be used for teacher names. So this one's going to be student, not student, but it's going to be teacher sort names. And what we'll do is we'll use smaller letters like this, teacher, and as long as it changes to a capital, we know we've got the name right. In this case, resort, and this goes, call it teacher names. And then the next up, we want class. So in this case, we're going to call this class sort names. If it's, there we go. So that's not right in this class. Notice it didn't update it. So I believe it is class sort names. Let's take a look at what that is. So all we need to do is go into the classes here, macros, and just relook at that. Look at that list here. And we'll take a look at class load, class list load. This is probably the one, class list load, that loads the list. That could be helpful, but class sort names. Yeah, this is the one I want, class load. This is the macro I want, class load class. So what it's going to do is going to take from the database and it's going to load up our class list. There's no sorting in that. That's fine. Okay, so that's the one I want for classes. Paste that in there, resort, and replace class list, right? Because classes are on a list. And then next up would be B32. We're going to focus on the exam name. So let's type this in, see if it exam sort names. Exam, that's look good. Resort exams. Next up, we have going to focus on our 33, which is the transactions. And then I believe this is trans. I'll double check on that. I'm not sure if I remember that trans. I think it looks right. And then next up, the last one, of course, is our notifications. So in this case, we'll do, I believe it's notifications or something like that. Email, I think it's email refresh list. Inside our email macros here, we want to refresh the list. So all the way down here, email refresh list. That's the macro that I want to run if the emails have changed. So I'm going to paste that in here. Resort email list. Okay, that's going to refresh the emails. Okay, so now we've got everything in case. So now all we would need to do is just update the individual. You saw it in students, so we're good to go on that. So if there's any changes, it's going to resort. The last thing what I want to do is I want to reset all these values to false. So B29 to B34, reset them to false. And that's okay. All of them at the same time is fine. B29 through B34, setting those to false. We've checked them all. So admin.range B29, B34, dot value equals false. I know I need to fix that. False, not 343. That could be a problem, big problem. B20, make sure you save before you run these macros in case you make an error like that. Set all name changes to false. Set all name changes to false. Okay, so it's going to get ready for the next one. So now we're going to save it as we do. B31, okay, that looks good. So basically it's going to run through if there's any name change, and we'll see that in update. Okay, let's take a look at this shared folder app. All right, I think we need to add one more backslash on here and backslash, okay, because we want, if it's going to be that, not the asterisk, okay, and. So basically we want to add that. Then after this, we're going to combine the user on that. Okay, so let's take a look at that and continue on. All right, that looks pretty good. No errors, no issues. What I want to do now is I want to create a folder manually and make sure that we actually can create a file. So I'm just going to basically create a folder, and I want to make sure that folder is exactly the same name as our user, just so we can do it manually and run it through so we can make an update accordingly. So let's do that now. And then what I'll do is I'll create a brand new folder here, and then I'll give it that same name as Fred Fretters, and I'll put the file, and I'll just copy one of the other files here. And I'll just copy this particular file, any one in here, run it through, and make sure that it's get updated and then deleted here. So we're going to run that macro now. Here, check for updates, running the macro, double checking that folder, making sure that the file is gone. Perfect. It got updated. I'm assuming the database got updated and the file's gone. Perfect. Now what I want to do is now I'm ready to create another one of these applications and basically see how it works in a shared mode. So I'm going to save our workbook. So now what I'm going to do is I got partner in. I'm going to create another one for another user. We're going to create another one for David Davis. So I'm going to do file and then save as. Just create another one, and I got David here. I've got it saved it up from some sample here. David Davis. So I'm going to save there, and then what I want to do is just replace it. And now I'm going to pull up both versions at the same time. So I'm going to pull up this one. So now I have both files open at the same time. And now all we need to do is log in as the other user. So we have Pt.19. That's going to be our Fred Fretters. Then we have the other one, which is right here. and this one's going to be David Davis. So I'm just going to go into this one. I'm going to log out of this one. Let's debug that and fix that. Clear, we need the colon, that's a semicolon. Okay, nobody saw that. We'll have to make those changes on both of those, by the way. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to log in. Let me double check David's password so I don't forget. Here under that, I think it's David Davis. So let's do David and then Davis, and then we're going to log in into, I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then click OK. Okay, so that's it. That looks good. So we've got that. So now basically, let's look in our admin. I've got this one logged in as David Davis. That's correct. And I've got this one. I just switched. So we've got 2 files. Okay, 2 files. So now what I want to do is I want to make sure that we're going to write that. Let's write one more macro so we can run that, but we can do that. We'd make the change, and I want that change to run automatically. So let's make a quick change to 1. Let's say this one that we've been working on inside the students here. And let's say we want to add in a brand new student, and we're going to call this, let's just say Betty and then White. Okay, just that's good enough. And then we're going to save that student. Okay, and so that's the Fred Fretters. This is the one that Fred Fretters. Hi, Betty. Okay, we got that email. That came from last time. Lovely. Okay, so now we know that we have that. And what we're going to do is we're going to look inside our folders and see if that got changed. So here we have Fred Fretters. And let's take a look in here. Nothing in there. That's correct because I don't want that change to be saved. In David Davis student, let's take a look at this one, the one that just got created. A19, B19, and C19. This would be Betty. This would be White. So if I open this here and we look here, we see that that's Betty. That's what I want, right? C19, right? That's White. Perfect. That's the way I want it. Okay, so everything looks really good the way we want it. We've got the file. So now what we want to do is we want to go into, and this is going to be all automated. So now I'm going to switch David Davis. So now we're going to go into developers. Inside this one, I'm going to run that share and seek on his file and make sure that it updates. So all we need to do is go into the application macros, check in. Remember, this is the David Davis file. We're going to run that, and then we're going to run it, and it's going to automatically update. So now it's done. So now the David Davis file, going into the students, and then we go down here looking for the top, and it's automatically here inside. Now Betty White is automatically updated here. So we see that it's now updated in both records. Okay, there's one more thing we have to do. I want this particular macro to run every X minutes. So how are we going to do that? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a macro, and then I'll just copy and paste. I'll keep both applications open so we can see that. So inside the application macros here, right, we have check for user updates, so that's good. So what I want to do is I want to write one more macro that's going to put it on a specific timer. So how are we going to do that? Well, we'll just create a small macro to do just that. So first of all, we're going to call sub run scheduled share and sync. Let's call it sync and share. Okay, so it can be anything. So we're going to run it based on a schedule. So I'm going to dimension the run at as a date. And then we're going to specifically run another one. I want to know the interval, right, in this case, or the sync minutes, in this case, sync minutes as long. So how many minutes there? And we'll just set it to 1 minute now. But what you can do is you can put this as a user variable. So you can do a drop-down list. Let's say we have it on the admin. Let's say we were going to do the admin here, and then we go the application settings. You could do something like sync how often here and put it here into variables. So that's certainly possible. We'll just do it at 1 minute right now. Sync minutes. And the sync, we'll just do 1. Sync minutes equal to 1. So what I want to do is I want to define a run at. Run at is equal to now plus, and then I want to determine the minutes. But I want to break those minutes down into, number of seconds. If we do 1, it's going to be 1 day, right? So if we do all the division, we get to something like 0.000694. So that's the math. 0.000 and then 6944. 6944, because 1 is a full day. Okay, so multiply that times the sync minute, and then we're going to get to exactly what time to run it at. So it's going to be exactly 1 minute. So basically at a certain interval, I want to run this macro, but I only want to run that macro if some conditions are met. So if, in this case, share sync is equal to yes, then we're going to run it. Then we're going to do application. We can run it at a specific time. Dot on time. We're going to run it at a specific time. Run at, what time we're going to run it? Run at. That's the time we're going to run it at. And what are we running? We're going to run that macro. else, what are we gonna do? If it's no, then what I wanna do is I wanna cancel out that. So I'm gonna write on air resume next. And the best way to cancel a specific scheduled macro is to make sure that you run the same macro but use false. So how does that happen? It's doing application dot on time, application dot on time. In this case, run at, we need to run it out. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna set the procedure. What is the procedure in this case? It's the same one, but we need to specify this in this case because it's going to be false. Procedure is going to be equal to the application check, and then what I want to do is schedule equals false. Schedule, and that's going to cancel each other. Colon equals false. So that's going to cancel. Basically, this is going to cancel any scheduled automatic. So there we go. So now all I want to do is take this macro and run it at the end of this here, this one right here. So that's all we do is just run it at the end of this. Very easy. So now we run it. Now it's going to run every minute. So now all we need to do is just, in case we want to do both of them, right, all I need to do is just copy this because those are the changes we made. Go into that other file, right, which is in here, the application macros here. Go to the bottom of this one, and then let's see, paste it in right about here, right? Paste it in. So running it, there we go. Okay, good. So now it's actually going to run. So now when I run it here, it's going to run automatically. Let's procedure. Let's spell that right. Okay, now we'll check that. I'm going to fix both of them now. Okay, so application and then this one too. It's not gonna help. Procedure spelling 101. Okay, good. So now all we need to do is run it, and now it's going to basically check every single minute. It's going to look for changes, and anytime those changes are made, it's going to update all the list. Now all you have to do is just simply update accordingly. So we would do all of these teacher name just as we did on the student. I'll let you do that because we've gone through the first one and we've already gone a long time on this. Great. I'm super glad I got to show this automated sharing and sync. Very cool. Thank you so much for joining me. If you like this workbook and you want to help us out, I've got 175 of these workbooks available for just $66. That's only 37 cents per template, and you can do whatever you want with it, customize it however you like, sell it, use it for clients, use it for your own, whatever you like. It's a great deal, and I would really appreciate it. That helps us out. Thanks so much. Next week is the final one, part 20. We're going to cover a multi-report dashboard on single click. It's going to be an incredible training. You won't want to miss the final part 20 of the School Manager. We'll see you then. Thanks so much.